Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Finance and Admin at the County on Monday, September 18th at 9:30 a.m. I am calling this meeting to order. As we gather this morning, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the First Nations. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history. We are also extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Connie, has roll call been taken?
Through you, Chair, yes, roll call has been taken and we have quorum.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? I see none. Can I have an adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting held on August 17th? A mover, please. Moved by the member from North Algona Wilbur Force, second by the member from Laurentian Hills. Are there any errors or omissions? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. We have no delegations today, so at this time I will turn it over to Mr. Kelly with his kind of sad administration report, quite frankly. Take it away, Craig.
Thanks for the setup, Chair. Appreciate that. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Monday. So as the Chair mentioned, my report starts on page 2 of your package, and of course, item number 1 and 2 are sad but joyous messages. So I think it's worthy just to read the number 1 because we had some fun with it. So item number 1 is the retirement of the gentleman to my right, Mr. Jeffrey Foss, the Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer. So Jeff has provided notice of his retirement effective December 15th, 2023. A walk down memory lane as Jeff joined the county on November 9th, 1998, so nearly 25 years to the date he will be leaving us. After providing sound financial advice to staff and elected in 2021, Jeff led the shift to the corporate services model. It's actually in November of 2020, actually, we started shifting to 2020, or to the communities or corporate services. And Jeff integrated many administrative services into this unified department. Of course, we are all sure that he will miss budget workshops, as we know that deep down these were his passion. As Jeff silently waited each meeting to don his glasses, leaping at every opportunity to address a calculation error or to dig deep into the corporate memory. We would like to extend our thanks to Jeff for all his hard work, of course, and dedication over the years, and wish Jeff all the health and happiness as he moves on to this next chapter in his life. So congratulations, Jeff, on that one. And item number 2, Lara Lepine, Director of Community Services. So Laura has provided her notice of retirement. So Laura will be staying a little longer than Jeff because she's faithful to the corporation and staying until January, mid-January. So Laura, like Jeff, I think there was a race to my office a couple of Fridays ago. Laura joined the County of Renfrew on October 13th, 98, and has been an integral part to the transformation of the department. She started as an employment services agent and worked through the download of services in the early 2000s. Laura has led the charge all the way. Becoming the director in 2018, Laura led her team through the human services integration at Renfrew County Place and again here at this building. So after all the extensive renovation that saw all the community services divisions operate under one roof for the first time in county history, so a major milestone for Laura and one she should be proud of. We will certainly miss Laura's passion for her job. We will certainly miss the fact that she brings it every day and that the people in her department that she serves and all the good work she's been responsible for in the community. Of course, like Jeff, we wish you all the best in your future. I know you've got a fabulous new career in travel, and I'm sure you're looking forward to it. So here's to you and your new great adventures, Laura. And I'll just end my information report pieces on the Eastern Ontario or Ontario East Municipal Conference. It was well attended by staff who learned quite a few new initiatives about innovative approaches to economic development and municipal governance. Also, it was well represented by members from the local municipalities who were there who did the same. It's always a good conference. It's always regional in its approach. and one we can definitely learn from smaller areas, more rural and more geographically based areas. So even more so, we had some great success presenting on RCVTAC, on the Warden 7 and 7 program, and there was a mention of the county forester and our work in the biomass or bioeconomy. So we were well represented as a county of Renfrew, and I'm happy to do that. Just for your calendars, we are back in Ottawa next year from September 11th to the 13th, a week later than this year, because now it's scheduled in Ottawa. It's a really nice venue. And we'll bring people together in an easier fashion for our folks to get to. So, Chair, those are my 3 information items before we get to resolutions.
Thank you so much. Why does everybody want to work for OMERS? Why? All right, we'll go back to information item number 1. I said it to Jeff earlier. Was it something I said? Anything on number 1, Jeff's retirement? And I know I'm not your chair, but was it something I said, Laura? No. Number 2, anybody? Well, congratulations to both of you, but, you know, it was, oh, I'm sorry, the member from Laurentian Hills, please.
As the new chair, was it something I said? But when I became chair of community services, I know that I was told by Councillor Brose not to worry, that Laura Lepine had everything well in hand, and he was actually very, very true and honest to that. I know we will miss you, Laura, for sure, and wish you all the best. Thanks.
Drat, now I feel like I should have said something nice about Fosse. I will when you retire, I promise. Okay. You've got a few months. All right, and then, oh, sorry, go ahead, member from North Algona, Wilbur Force.
Thank you, Chair, and I just wanted to echo what Councillor from Laurentian Hills has said. Having worked with Laura and her team through the whole reorganization of community services and bringing it all under one roof was a huge undertaking, and it wasn't just the movement, it was also the province's shift in direction, which was all happening at the same time. And Laura and her team certainly took on the challenge, were a big part of the transformation, and hats off. I've certainly enjoyed my time working with Laura, and I know her staff have as well, and look forward to how many more adventures she's going to take when she has retired. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Again, maybe I should have said some nice things about Fosse. You've been a great director. I'm going to miss you. All right, moving on to number 3, OEMC. I had the opportunity in our 14-hour car ride last week to talk to the warden about it, and I know that it sort of dwindled in size when it moved from Kingston to Cornwall, but I understand numbers were up this year, and excellent venue. Yes? Or you could just
I wasn't sure if that was a statement or a question.
No, I was, yeah, it sounded like it really came back together.
Yes, Chair, and to you, it looked, I don't know the actual final numbers, but it came back together. The venue is fantastic. It was, I've never been in that venue before in Ottawa, as a co-located hotel and conference center, much improved over Cornwall, easier access to a lot of people if they wanted to fly from somewhere far away. And as an audience, well engaged, and I want to say there are about 400 people or so, give or take, which is back to kind of pre-pandemic Kingston days, I guess. So they need to tweak. The shift from Cornwall to Ottawa was sudden because of the NAV Centre being used for refugees and current issues they have down there. So they will tweak it in following years, I think, to make Ottawa a suitable site.
That is wonderful to know. I know that the last year in Cornwall, it went down to about 200, 250, yeah. So that's great. Anything further on OEMC? Seeing none, let's move on to your resolutions.
Thank you, Chair. And of course, you will have a chance to vet these 2 retirees later in the year. So item number 4 is a service delivery review update, and I'll read the recommendation to get it on the floor, Chair. It's the Finance and Administration Committee recommends to County Council that Strategy Corps Inc. be enlisted to provide an update to the 2020 service delivery review at an estimated quotation of $30,555, excluding HST, as a strategic review of the county's organizational structure, and that the funding for this initiative come from the provision for unallocated funds.
Wonderful. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by the member from Amaston Bromley, seconded by the member from Killaloe, Haggerty, and Richards. A little background.
No, thank you. And assuming you've read this piece, I'll go into a little more detail on the background. So, of course, for those who were with us in 2020, you'll recall starting a process in 2019 and moving into, towards the end of November, a whole review of the corporation, really from top down and involving all departments and all divisions. And we had a fairly lengthy report, some of it you received in closed, some of which you received in open. There were some key deliverables at the time, several key deliverables at that time, and we moved on some of them, or have been moving on some of them as we rolled out over the last 3 years. Of note was the almost immediate action late that November to move to the corporate services model by elimination of one director and moving to again, the gentleman on my right, as a director of corporate services, and bringing the functions of the treasury and human services departments under one director. There were pieces about the trails maintenance structure that have been moved now into, it's been refocused to public works and engineering for these maintenance. Engineering services, you've seen reports on consolidation of engineering services into the public works department, so that's been done. We've beefed up our communications efforts. We've hired and redeployed some of our HR staff and created some capacity in that department. Our interconnected health services, we play a much bigger role now in the community as a whole with OVOHT, with RCVTAC, and other health services that we're rolling out. And the IT roadmap and customer service efforts with human integration and stuff. These are efforts that formed part of that larger study that was done. And some of the housing pieces and real property pieces were amalgamated. In November 2020, the warden at the time said we should bite this off one piece at a time, or tackle this one bite at a time, and we've done so. However, after 3 years now, we're seeing a corporate shift as we exit the pandemic, I guess. I always hate to say that because it's always around the next corner. But as we enter this new phase after the height of the pandemic, we are noticing significant challenges, and it's everywhere from losing corporate memory. You've heard, well, in the last month, I've lost 75 plus years of corporate memory with 3 retirements. So what does that do to the corporation? A much younger workforce is now entering with less experience. We are challenged to hire talent. We are equally challenged by our other municipalities throughout Eastern Ontario, but at the county, we're also challenged by local municipalities who are now hiring very similar positions as we are, and with equal rates of pay. So those are new challenges that we hadn't experienced before. And there isn't a larger talent pool to draw from, so we're really challenged across the mat. We are working on new priorities that we haven't focused on in the past number of years, including a revamped review of our housing stock and what we do with housing, the greater health role that we're playing, and a few other priorities that we're looking at. All that coupled with the financial challenges moving into the following years that will see us navigate difficult inflationary years and otherwise. So with the retirement of these 2 key individuals and your new CAO over the last year and other significant changes, I'm suggesting that we just need a brief pause, have a consultant come in. They may even verify some of the things that I see need to happen, but they need to discuss with the new council what they have seen happening over the last 3 years, at least over the last year of your term. I may have misused the term key elected officials. I think it will involve all elected officials. on this one, because I think this should be your strategy moving forward and how you see your senior leadership team and at least the upper level of management move forward. So I think with that, Chair, I'll stop and I'll let the discussion take place.
I think that was excellent information in addition to the background and the agenda, so thank you for that. Discussion. Member from Edmundston Bromley, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you through you to Mr. Kelly. I think that change is probably accelerating, and to a large degree, I think what the pandemic did is we were forced into accepting that there were changes that we could make, that there was resistance to making, and I think that that's having a larger impact. I think with respect to the senior leaders, I think that upon Ms. Lepine's departure, I think the chief is the last director that was in the room when I got here in 2014. And we've had substantial, I know that just prior to Mr. Kelly's predecessor, we long-term staff at the then treasurer, and also the director of social services at the time, Mr. Kutchke and Mr. Anderson, and then Mr. Hutton. That is ongoing and will always be ongoing. I am of a mind that having just bid farewell to Ms. Rose Grunts and now to Mr. Foss and Ms. Lepine, I think that they may be dinosaurs from the perspective of having a 25-year term commitment to this employer. I think that will be one of the changes. In any event, I recognize the dynamic even within this is changing. And I think that this would be money well spent in positioning us moving forward. What I would certainly would suggest, and I do understand, as I had said, I believe that it is accelerating, but I would like to see perhaps the vision that is going to be delivered, the outcome of this, have a little bit more legs. What I would hope is that there might be kind of these mini reviews, if you will, each term of council, but it's been, as I said, it's only been, in November of this year, it'll be 3 years since we received this. So I think if we're planning towards those intrinsic reviews per term of council, that might be a consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Well, I think that it's excellent timing 1 year in for 8 of our new elected, so I think that this is the right time. Member from Killu, Haggerty and Richards, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow up to our previous member, will this company make a recommendation in regards to retention? Because just following up what the previous comments were, that the dinosaur of the 25-year club, and people are no longer in that situation where they want to hop around from job to job or location to location. Would this company make recommendations how to retain these people? I'm just throwing that out there, and I think it's worthy for them to discuss, because they have the expertise, and they visit other sites, and maybe they'll come back with recommendations. Do we give someone $5,000 extra? Do we give them an extra week holiday? We have to be proactive in retaining people longer than that, so that we have more dinosaurs. We want more dinosaurs.
I'm going to throw it over to Craig, but I think you just nailed your own question. I don't think people stay in their careers the way they used to. I think it's a generational thing at this point where, we have the baby boom and even Gen Xers that are staying in their jobs longer, but then as we move into millennials, Gen Zs, they're not. So I think that's going to be a shift that we might not be able to solve, but I totally understand what road you're driving down. Craig?
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Wasn't high on the deliverables to talk about it, but we can certainly weave that into the discussions. For years, we've always suggested to people to grow a little bit with the county, and then if they want to spread their wings and learn some more, but you got to come back. And I guess I did that as well. But we are challenged, like you, to retain, and we're seeing that folks will do lots of great work here and will leave to a municipality, and then they're jumping to another municipality. It's municipal jumping is at a height, I would say, right now, and I don't know how you stop that. We have a very good benefit package, a very decent vacation package, and yet our competitors, including some of your own municipalities, are upping the game all the time, and I don't know where that stops, quite honestly, and that's. The hope is that once they get here, they like our culture better once they get in here and help form that new culture moving forward. I know that folks like the professionalism here at the county, and they like the work atmosphere. So we're hoping that they will come and stay for a long time.
I feel like he just dissed all of our municipalities. Yes, Warden, and then the member from North Algona.
And I think to the member from Kildahaga-Richards, there has been some reports, and I think we had one about 3 months ago where we changed our bylaw number 1. Some of our employment packages. So I think we did add a week's holidays to one of the categories, or some of the categories, and we have undertaken periodic reviews and stretched out pay bands or reassessed positions and moved them into different bands. So I think we do that. I'm not sure we do it annually, and I'm not sure we do it enough, and that's not a criticism. I just don't know. But we have done that a couple of times in the past where we've done some things with bylaw number 1, I think it's called. And so hopefully we continue to do that on a regular basis, and that's, something, maybe we should be adding to the CAO's performance appraisal when it rolls around sometime this year.
I think the warden just gave Craig another job.
Yeah, no, and maybe it's not. Maybe there's another way of doing it. But anyway, it's part of our conversation. And I think when you look at the bigger picture, and I'm forming this as I go along, so if I hesitate and backtrack a little bit, it's because I haven't quite got it clear in my mind yet. When we're looking at this, I was going to bring up something under new business about having the treasurer convene a meeting with all the treasurers and everybody bring an asset management plan to the table with pizza, and see if we can force some kind of shared services or shared purchasing or shared thinking. When I think of that, I don't think that's fair for the treasurer to try and facilitate that. So is that something we can do with this group, where they take the different divisions across all the municipalities and facilitate a conversation? Because I don't think we have the political time or will. We get distracted by political butterflies on a regular basis. So I can't promise you I could hold a meeting with every mayor in the room once a month and force 6 priorities. I don't think the CAO can promise that. And I don't think it's fair to the treasurer or the director of development and property, or the director of operations to do that, because it'll be seen as having a self-interest. And so maybe it has to take it from the political table to the operational table and have someone facilitate those conversations to try and break through the silos that we've managed to create amongst 18 municipalities, or 19 including the county. So anyway, I don't know if this is the group to do that or if it's a topic for a future conversation, but I'm just going to throw that out there because it's been bothering me. We've not made enough progress on shared services and shared purchasing, saving money, saving resources, or pooling resources, and is going to bite us in the proverbial derriere at some point within the next couple of years financially. So I think we have to figure out how we're going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know nobody wants to say the A word, but the sad fact of the matter is, Craig just said, we only have so big a talent pool. That pool is not turning into an Olympic-sized swimming pool. So where are we going to go in the next few years to ensure that we're delivering services out of our municipalities with virtually the same amount of staff? Go ahead, Craig.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll weave my question back to the question on the table, or my answer to the question on the table. So part of my conversation, or part of the conversation in 2020 with Strategy Core was about shared services, at least, and how we work with a limited capacity or a limited talent pool. However, to your comments, and happy to discuss it under new business even further, a conversation amongst some of us at the senior leadership team was predicated on some one or two positions that the municipalities were hiring for that we knew that the talent pool was extremely little or zero. And I reached out to my colleagues, my other CAO colleagues, to say, folks, we need to get together. We need a conversation. But I was quite clear, it's not the county leading this. This is a county being part of it, because we're part of the same, we're challenged by the same way. I'm just offering to facilitate those things. My colleague reminded me this morning, about 25 minutes ago, that the clerk's treasurers, Renfrew County clerk's treasurers, are meeting here on October the 5th. And we're going to invite the CAOs and other departments that are affected by shared services in that day, and have that meeting that you're talking about, to talk staff to staff at first and see where that goes out, because I think we're all being challenged by the same positions and then coming back to council.
I think that's a really good start. Member from North Elgin and Wilbur Force, and then Killaloe. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the CAO again. A focus from the last strategic core review was on succession planning and the opportunity for staff to gain more exposure to some of the leadership positions. Is that going to be part of, when I look at the deliverables, and it talks about current state assessment and opportunities, is there going to be any exploration into any maybe new or additional opportunities for staff development that may help with the recruitment and retention, or the maintenance and growing of the organization?
Through you, Chair. Excellent question, Councillor Brose. No, it's, yes, so we've all been clear to staff that a succession plan doesn't mean necessarily you will get that job when someone retires. So just want to be clear on that. But however, that sets the staff up nicely to be prepared for that, should that occasion happen. So in the two items that we talked about earlier today, Mr. Foss has a very good management staff, and that said, Ms. Lepine has a very good management staff and are quite suited. I was asked off the air, when these folks retire, if there's a delay in replacing these folks, what are we going to do? Well, I think in the interim we have a legislative, well, not in the interim, well, yes, in the interim, we have a legislative requirement to at least have a treasurer. So if this delay takes longer to replace Mr. Foss, then we will have to appoint a treasurer, of which there are staff well trained and have been dumped on corporately in terms of corporate memory over the past several years, that they're prepared to move forward. The same in Ms. Lepine's shop. There are certain requirements, and of course the management team is well set to act on her behalf in the very short term period while we look for replacement. That all said, I think it's worthy, because we have not done it since the fall, late fall of 2020, early 2021, to really review the corporate services model as it's existed for the last 2+ years, to determine how that worked, and Mr. Foss has offered to offer his opinion on those things to the consultant. Did it work? What didn't work? Are there other models to follow? What is that piece that we're missing? And we've had some good chats about that. The same in community services. There are major changes coming in 2021, especially Ontario Works is under a very large funding gap from where we are today and where we're moving into the future. So just by occurrence, there will be changes coming to Ontario Works and that function in community services. So on their own, they're also looking at strategically how they reform themselves moving out of 2020. So your question about succession planning, there are folks aligned to do well, but I think the corporation needs to find out what we need first and then match those people with those roles as we move forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Member from Killaloe, Haggerty and Richards, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not quite sure on what the recipe for success is, but within roughly 8 minutes, we've bounced around so many ideas that I think are imperative for this group to talk more about, whether it's in a small group or a larger group, and maybe there needs to be a committee to deal with all of these ideas that just came out in the last 8 minutes. I mean, this is incredible, and everyone has their own idea right now. I'm not sure what the recipe is, but certainly I think there deserves, whether it's this committee or another separate committee, but there certainly is enough food here to take this even further. And maybe it's a follow-up of this this company after their recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Member from Edmundston Bromley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I was thinking along the same lines as Councillor Mayville. What also occurred to me is, and I'm unsure in the end if the warden had suggested it was going to be new business and then he's been reconsidering whether it's going to be new business. I think that there is an opportunity, and I don't think it's this meeting, perhaps some consideration can be brought to bear and to distill what it is. Certainly there seems to be, I think, a lot of frustration as to move forward. But I think bringing it back to this, it is not unusual, actually, that we have something in front of us and it becomes a Frankenstein monster. I think bringing it back to the very specifics of this, which is looking at our org chart, essentially, I think that there is value in that, which is not to say that there's not value in the other thing, but the other things that we've been discussing, that's not in front of us right now. Just a very couple of things, much like I had inquired at a previous meeting that much of our discussion vis-a-vis remuneration, the employment bylaw, et cetera, emanated from what I refer to as the, was it Gallagher report? Likewise, I'm not sure, I think that this is a public document, actually, the work of Strategy Corp, the strategic review, that would be made available. I think perhaps we're underutilizing our portal online to make a lot of these key documents available. I'm not sure if the new councillors are actually familiar with the report that Strategy Corp would have put together. The final was approved in November, as I say, of 2020. I think that as a starting point would be something moving forward. And with respect to the key component, I think of the discussion that has ensued vis-a-vis succession, retention, et cetera. I think that does fall neatly within our recently adopted strategic plan, which is workforce development. I think that is both intrinsic and extrinsic. I don't know that there was a lot of discussion about the intrinsic when we were working our way through that, because I agree that it is not changing, and I don't agree that continuing to raise the stakes at the table is the solution. It's just raising the stakes at the table that everyone that's sitting around the table must ante up to remain at the table. That I think the solution is workforce development or adaptation. Quite frankly, I don't know whether it was the technology that drove the adaptation of robotics into, say, auto assembly, whether it was a lack of staff. The same could be said of my farm. The round baler came along in the nick of time, just as I found it very difficult to engage young folks to come and work in the hay fields. As they became scarce, the round baler did. Now, were they pushed out because of the round baler, or did the round baler come along in the nick of time that I could continue to afford to farm? I don't know. But at the end of the day, that's a separate discussion, and this one right here, I think it is appropriate to pursue this unto itself, and perhaps Mr. Kelly can give consideration towards how we would move forward on some of these other items that we've been discussing, and what would be the appropriate venue for undertaking that kind of investigation.
Anything further? I will call for the vote. All in favor? Excellent. The report as a whole, may I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by the member from Killaloe, Haggerty and Richards, seconded by the member from North Laguna, Wilbur Force. Oh, sorry, just saw you there, Val. I'll pick on you later on. All in favor? Excellent, thank you. And now we'll move on to corporate services. Take it away, Jeff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Finance Committee. My report begins on page number 7. Item number 1 under information is the 2024 budget schedule. So attached as Appendix 1, that you will see that we have really just laid out a number of steps, quite a number of them internal to the organization, as staff are already working behind the scenes really on the 2024 budget development process. There are a number of significant deadlines internally for staff to meet, some of them coming up very quickly. One of the most important ones by the end of this week is our 10-year capital plans. So a lot of work going on behind the scenes to prepare those items. I do want to draw your attention to an error that I made on that particular schedule, really close to the bottom. Item number 11, I continue to use an old template while I develop this, and I've named Community Services Social Services, so I apologize to my friends and colleagues in Community Services for that oversight, but I am sure that next year at this time, somebody will ensure that they don't use my wrong template, and that's what I've done. I do note one of the items, and I guess I've highlighted it in red. Item number 6 is an asset management plan update to County Council, a special meeting. I don't believe that a meeting notice has gone out yet for that, but we are certainly, maybe it has, but we are certainly planning on November the 9th to ensure that at the request of the warden, that we dedicate a special time, set aside a special time to present to you an update on our asset management plan that would include condition ratings for all of the assets that are under our ownership and control. You may recall in February of this year at our budget workshop session that I was reminding Council that Ontario Regulation 588.17 requires that beginning in 2024 that we have an asset management plan that covers all assets owned by the County of Renfrew. Previously, they were only special categories of assets, and for us, we were only required to have asset management plans for our linear assets, roads, bridges, and culverts. For those of you who have water and wastewater, there was other categories certainly that were required to be part of your asset management plans, but effective July 1 of 2024, it's all assets. So for us, we've always had an asset management plan covering linear assets, our entire fleet, regardless of where those vehicles were, EMS or Public Works, but social housing, all of our vehicles were included in our fleet asset management plan, as well as all of our buildings. So whether they were paramedic bases or administration buildings or Public Works garages or certainly our social housing assets, we had asset management plans in place for those major asset categories. But the next update has to include all equipment items as well. So essentially on our financial statements, when we look at that line that says tangible capital assets, all of those assets now require an asset management plan. So we'll bring that forward to you at the special meeting of County Council and provide an update on condition ratings. We'll dig deeply into some of the elements of the asset management plan, specifically with service levels. And a number of years ago, this council has decided on service level standards for all of our assets. So for example, and we often use as an example, pavement condition index. So a brand new highway in the county being a PCI rating of 100, and our standard was to try and get the entire inventory of roadways in the county to an average PCI rating of 70. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, as well as bridge ratings. We'll look at facility condition index for our buildings, and then essentially fleet being replaced on either a number of years for a vehicle or a number of kilometers or hours of machine usage, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll talk a lot about service level standards, as well as our 10-year capital plans that we have in place. Those plans are being designed and have been designed to meet the existing service level standard that was approved by County Council. And that will, of course, tie into our long-term financial plan and for 2024, the annual budget process. So there's a synergy between all of those plans. And so we'll spend a day talking about those and presenting to Council a number of options to ensure that we maintain our infrastructure. One of the other items that we typically put on this particular list or this item in September each year are budget guidelines for the operating budget. And we're certainly always certainly open to Council's direction. But from a staff perspective, like last year, again this year, we have a number of financial pressures that are upon us to not only meet our requirements to continue to fund those capital renovation plans and 10-year capital plans, but also our operating expense side of the business as well. And so at the CIO's direction, staff are currently working on plans to ensure that we have a service level budget for 2024, which is status quo. In other words, we're attempting to put a budget together that ensures that we maintain our existing service levels as far as our operating departments are concerned. I think the November the 9th meeting might help to shed a little bit of light on some of those pressures as we attempt to manage a reasonable levy for our taxpayers to ensure that not only our operating expenses are covered, that service levels are maintained, but also that our infrastructure is renewed over the longer period of time. So that's really that's information item number 1. Item number 2, 3, and 4 are all items that we bring forward to this committee and then to County Council every year, really just to summarize and provide for your information in a comparative format what each of our local municipalities as well as the county around Renfrew did as far as the 2024 budget is concerned. So item number 2 is the 2023 tax rate summary. And if you're looking at it on your screen, my hope is you can use the plus bar and kind of zoom in to see some of that information because it gets kind of tiny when you print it out. But at the top of the page, you will see that we have tax ratios available for our different property classes. And you also have education tax rates as well as the upper tier general tax rate for each of the property classes. Those were adopted the tax rates were adopted at a April session of County Council following our February budget workshop. But you also have listed alphabetically all of our local municipalities and the tax rates that are in effect for each municipality. So you can see your tax rates as well as those of your peers on a comparative chart. Item number 3 is the 2023 taxable and PIL levy by levy type. And so that chart again, that's actually chart number 4. Like we just mislabeled those. So chart number 4 is the taxable and PIL levy that has been created by multiplying the weighted current value assessment that's provided to us by MPAC on an annual basis, and the tax rates that are adopted by each local municipality as well as the county of Renfrew. And I also have at the very top of the chart the total education taxes that are collected for all municipalities. Again, education rates are set by the province of Ontario. We have no impact on those other than we are required by legislation to collect those from property taxpayers. So roughly I think that's $30 million. Again, that's tiny printing on my printed sheet. And $52 million for the county of Renfrew, and you'll see each of your local municipalities, the total general municipal levy that is collected by multiplying, again, weighted CVA by your tax rates. At the bottom, You'll notice that we have totals by property class and then totals for all property classes for all municipalities, and then the percentage of taxation that is collected for each one of the property classes. Again, we present that for your information. That's item number 2. Item number 3 is, sorry, I guess I'm probably now skipping over to item number 4. That's the 2023 Levy Summary Report. So once again, by multiplying again the weighted CVA provided to us by impact times your local municipal tax rate, we can calculate the total taxes that are being collected by your municipality. And if we subtract from that weighted CVA growth, that is new tax revenue, and we talk every year when we talk about tax policies that additional or new revenue only comes to a municipality when it comes to growth. When you're looking at if MPAC ever decides to have another updated reassessment, once they do that, we will have dollars that come to a municipality through reassessment related changes, but that's not new revenue. All we're simply doing is shifting that tax burden either between properties, between classes, or in a two-tier structure between municipalities. So that update by MPAC doesn't create revenue, but new growth does. That's the building permits that you're issuing in your municipality. That's new municipal tax revenue that's available to you this year that was not there last year. And so to understand the true budgetary impact from the data that we can extract from Opta, we take the total municipal levy dollars that are available to each of you each year, and we subtract your weighted CVA growth, being the new municipal revenue that came to you. And what we're left with is really the budgetary impact to the existing ratepayers in each municipality. So highlighting for you on page 12, the County of Renfrew is identified in yellow at the bottom of the chart, and you'll see that the levy in 2023 calculated through Opta at $52,893,934. I think that's about $38 difference from our actual bylaw levy. So it gives us a sense that other than, again, on 12 or $13 billion of total assessment, from a rounding point of view, we're within about $38 on the Opta calculated system. So we have good confidence, a high level of confidence that the data is accurate. $52,893,000 in 2023 for the County of Renfrew. Last year, $50,540,000. That's a total levy change of $2.3 million, or 4.66%. If we subtract from that the weighted CVA growth, again, that's new money coming to us from building permits, essentially new assets in our municipalities of 2.16%. The net impact to the existing ratepayers in in all municipalities for the County of Renfrew is 2.5%. That is exactly the target that this council set for staff when we prepared the budget for 2024, and that is the bylaw that you adopted in February, and then the tax rates that you adopted in April to get us to exactly 2.5% increase in municipal levy dollars. And you'll see on a comparative basis, you can find your own municipality. The calculations are exactly the same. And once again, this is really just a chart that we bring forward to you and all of County Council each and every year so that you can understand the total dollar impacts that are in place because of the budgetary decisions that we make at each individual council. Returning to the report then, this should be item number 5. Item number 5 is Provincial Offenses Administration workload. And again, it's comparative from April through to the most current month for us, August, and you'll see that in August we are returning to the number of charges received at 726 is the same number that we had in the month of April, sort of bouncing back from a lower activity level in May, June, July, and August. Of course, we had a delegation that appeared at the recent AMO conference, speaking specifically to our concerns with respect to provincial offenses, the number of courts that were canceled, the problems that we were experiencing with not having sufficient number of justices of the peace available in Eastern Ontario. And we also highlighted for them the financial impact that the County of Renfrew was experiencing because of the drop in predominantly Highway Traffic Act charges and what that meant to us. And all I can say is perhaps our delegation did a stellar job speaking at their opportunity during the AMO conference, because obviously the charges are bouncing back. And you'll notice in the very next item, number 6, in the month of August, only one of our scheduled court dates for the month of August was canceled, which is really reversing a trend that we had seen for 5 months previous to that, when 60% of all of our court cases were canceled because we had no justices available to us for those particular court days. But you'll still notice in item number 6, at the very far right-hand column, months to clear the backlog at our current rate. We are still at 12 months to clear the backlog. That's after the Regional Senior Justice of the Peace and Crown Attorney's Office directed us to stay a number of charges that were dated prior to December of 2021. There were over 500 charges that we pulled from this backlog for reasons that we've already communicated to this committee. And so you'll see that rather than the backlog being 17 or 18 months, they were back down to 12 months, but there is still a backlog. And the backlog exists primarily because of the fact that until this month, 60% of our court days had been canceled. Item number 7, again, as a information item for you, we have attached an update advising that on August the 16th, 2023, the Ontario government filed Regulation 26123 to extend the current assessment cycle and the valuation date of January the 1st, 2016 through to the end of the 2024 taxation year. So as I mentioned earlier, we will not be experiencing, or don't anticipate to experience any shifts in the municipal tax burden because of reassessment anytime before it looks like 2025 would be the very first year that's available to us. Item number 8, Province of Ontario news release dated August the 22nd of 2023. We've included that for this committee. That is their announcement that they are returning to a 75-25 provincial municipal funding model for public health agencies. Just a reminder that we had a delegation that met with Parliamentary Assistant Don Gallagher Murphy from the Ministry of Health to raise our concerns about their announcement in 2019 that they were going to make a change to the cost-sharing model. We do know that for the last number of years, the Renfrew County and District Health Unit has been receiving mitigation funding directly from the province of Ontario to the tune of over $900,000. If that mitigation funding was removed, and if the province of Ontario continued down their course of moving to a 70-30 funding model, the obligated municipalities, County of Renfrew, City of Pembroke, Township of South Algonquin, would be responsible to cover that shortfall. So that's really good news. I would like to say that's because of the delegation that met with the minister in August. However, they preempted AMO with a news release announcing that they were making this decision to return to this cost share model. Item number 9, dealing with development charges, and Mr. Byron Tan from Watson and Associates provided an overview of the development charges study for the County of Renfrew at our August meetings, both at Finance and Admin as well as County Council. At the August 30th session, staff were requested to distribute a copy of this study, as well as provide an invitation for all municipalities to provide comments and/or questions related to the concept of development charges at the upper tier level, at the county level, for our growth-related asset projects. Many municipalities have provided questions and a number of issues, if you will, but many municipalities reached out and said that they were unable to provide it in time for the meeting today. And so we've extended that opportunity for all municipalities to put together those questions and issues and concerns for us, so that at the October meeting of this committee, we will review those. I'm going to forward all of those questions to Mr. Tam to ensure that he has an opportunity to provide some responses to your questions. And then it will be a decision of this committee as to how we move forward with development charges in what way, shape, or form. And item number 10 is a business case at the September 13th meeting last week of Health Committee. A resolution was adopted recommending that the restorative care staffing complement at Bonnechere Manor be increased by 2 full-time physiotherapy assistant positions from the existing part-time hours effective October the 22nd, and that they advise our committee, and you'll see that there's a business case attached. And Madam Chair, those are all the items on my report.
Thank you. All right, we'll move back to information item number 1, the budget schedule. Member from Edmundston Bromley, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, possibly to Mr. Foss, but I think he identified that the direction was by Mr. Kelly at their discretion. So we did, in fact, Council did approve the new policy vis-a-vis COLA and how it would be calculated on an ongoing basis moving forward. The other pretty significant component of the September meeting of Finance Administration has been the establishment of the levy target, the increased target. So in this instance, I understand that the asset management plan, perhaps my expectation at least, is that the long-term financial plan is going to be updated by means of that as well. But I am, at this point, since the budget process is being undertaken now or commencing now, it will be using a target. So what is the target that it is using?
Go for it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps I could start at least that response, and perhaps Mr. Kelly might want to jump in as well. But we are currently working on developing operating budgets for all departments in 2024 using essentially a status quo service level approach. So we are applying sort of the same process that we go through every year, which is we start from scratch and we build up the budget for each one of our expenditure lines within each department. The finance department has a number of meetings that we schedule with each management team, and we're going to be proceeding, I guess, on with those meetings with the understanding that we want to maintain the existing service level, not service level enhancements, not service level changes, but existing service levels with existing costs. We do have, as Councillor Donahue mentioned, we did get direction from County Council to begin building the non-union COLA changes for 2024 based on the schedule that we produced at last month's meeting. We do have an existing agreement, collective agreement in place with CUPE for both of our long-term care homes, so we understand what the rates are in effect for those operations. We are building some assumptions into our operating budgets for the other union agreements, which are expiring this year. So that would be the paramedic service agreement as well as the Renfrew County Housing Corporation agreement. And so we are essentially applying a status quo approach. As Councillor Donahue mentioned, each and every year at this meeting, we typically look to the committee to provide for some operating guidelines, some levy target guidelines, which is in effect a COLA expenditure target or guideline for each of our operating departments. But it's becoming increasingly obvious to us as we go through this current exercise that there are some departments that are going to, even to maintain status quo, are going to be very challenged with at least operating within our long-term financial plan targets of 3% of COLA. For the entire department, that's going to be very difficult to achieve. So what we're doing, or what we decided to do, was to create a status quo service level budget to present to you. Part of that will be done at the November meeting with the long-term financial plan, and of course the budget workshop has been set aside to talk about all of the operating expenditures for 2024 as well. So that's our background, if you will, at this stage. That's what staff are currently busy at, and perhaps that's all for me, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anything further on the member from Amherst Bromley?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you through you to Mr. Foss. The challenge for me continues to be I have no idea what status quo is going to project, and in fact, in the first several years, of course, we were using the 3% that had been established in the long-term financial plan. I think since 2019, it's been 2.5%. In each of those years, I think, if not from 2019, at least from 2020 onwards, the target was set in September. It is, by the way, set by council. It is recommended by FNA to council, but it is council that establishes those targets. In the budget workshop of each of those years, when the target was set at 2.5%, there were certainly budgetary pressures that were showing what the status quo would look like, and in all instances, it was going to look like more than a 2.5%. So I understand that we might get there, but I don't understand, and I cannot have a concept of what status quo is, because what it sounds like is you'll know what our levy target is when we're done, and that's not been the practice that we have established here in all of the budgets that I have participated in. So it still seems to me that there should be a target set.
Go ahead, Craig.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. And we understand that point. And so the concept behind the now is that we have this direction for this November meeting where the asset management plan and the long-term financial plan would be discussed. We know, Mr. Foss has already outlined a couple. We know that we've added, there were some mid-year changes to paramedic services where we added a whole new base and a new ambulance that automatically pushes us close to probably 1.5% or something like that, just on those decisions right there. The COLA, the union, were above any 3% guidance that we've had in the past that a long-term financial plan has set out for us. We didn't, I felt, to suggest to the senior leadership team to make service level changes early on in the game would be detrimental to county council to bring those in without your approvals or even suggestion going to committee. But really preempting this long-term financial plan decision in November, I think would be a mistake. And that's why we've delayed at least setting a rate until we've had this fulsome discussion in November. But happy to take guidance otherwise.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And of course, it still remains uncertain. We're 2 weeks away from essentially the end of Q3. That report's not going to be coming to Finance and Administration and Council until following the Asset Management Plan LTFP meeting scheduled for the 9th of November. So we're not going to see that, because just even on paramedic service, what I certainly made note of when we saw the Q2 report is we are seeing, I am uncertain if that is going to endure for the balance of the year, but we had seen a substantial diminishment. We were under budget on the benefit line, and I can't remember the last time we saw that in the paramedic service. We all are certainly aware that the presumptive PTSD has had a pretty substantial impact on the paramedics, on the paramedic service, and in fact, I should be very careful, across the emergency services, paramedics being the only one that is engaged through the county of Renfrew. But there are offsetting things, and I am certainly understanding, as we were in the adoption of the 2023 budget, there were several columns, the first of which is, okay, this is the column council of staying within the target that was set, and here are some of the things that staff are recommending where we could find some savings to adhere to that. However, that's not the recommendation. If you move to the next column, you will see that here is the status quo being presented of what the cost requirements, what the levy requirement would be to maintain this, and then there was a third column, which was an expansion of service. So I'm certainly cognizant that there is a very, very real, in fact, likely scenario where at the budget workshop, we are going to be confronted with that again. But in the process that is being put in front of us, it doesn't look like we're going to have an option of anything else, that we're only going to be seeing, here's what it will cost to keep the same. And just as I'd identified, I think there are some avenues to explore that aren't always going to be on the expense or the expenditure side of the ledger. And that is my concern, that I think that there should be, in my estimation, I believe that there should be a target set that will inform one of the columns that the budget workshop will see in probably January of 2024. That would be my desire.
First of all, I think we could probably get Q3 prior to our asset management meeting, yes? Like as part of the package? Yeah.
Yeah, part of the package, I think.
Okay,
Yep.
well, that would definitely be helpful. Any other comments from committee? I think that we're in a very unusual year. I think Craig just brought up the one thing that's been gnawing at me, that we decided to increase our paramedic service. And so I think that there are also going to be things in other departments, especially once we look at our asset management and our long-term financial plan, that could actually change our budget targets. So I think it was actually prudent not to give us a target until and I get how late this meeting is going to be in the year, but I think that it may guide us in a way that we didn't see. Is there anything further? Member from Killaloe, Haggerty and Richards, please.
Thank you, Chair. So are you saying that operational is status quo until we do our asset plan?
Through you, so to answer the question, I'm sorry, Councillor Donahue, I didn't answer the question. What is status quo? What we're trying to do is I'm not going to define status quo. We're trying to set it out like for like. If we're selling this many apples, we're going to do this many apples next year. We are not building pressures in necessarily. We're not adding new services. We're just saying if we did everything today, what we're doing tomorrow, this is what the budget would be. And I've just gone down a different road, and I forget your question. Your question was
are we status quo on operation until we do the asset?
Through you, yes, that is the scenario where we're going to suggest to you, here's what today is in an inflationary pressured world.
So in other words, the priority is to accomplish our goals as far as the asset plan prior to looking at departmental or operational needs.
That is correct, sir. Thank you.
Member from Abbotston Bromley.
Sorry, I wonder, just for clarity, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, so there is a budget schedule. The budget is going to be beginning, and I can't, I think that this coming week actually was the 10-year plan, et cetera. But in the answer to Councillor Mayville, I want to make sure I understand, like, are we essentially just setting rudimentary until November? The reason, Madam Chair, that I am challenged with the process that's being put in front of us is there will have been 2.5 months of budgeting towards a thing without there being any input from council. And if essentially the budget process isn't really going to be the budget process until we have the asset management plan meeting in November, then my concern is somewhat allayed. But if I'm misunderstanding that, in fact, the typical budget process is going to be employed now in 2023, and I need to have clarity here, and I don't know where committee will be, I am given to making a resolution that we set a target. So I just, if I could have clarity on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just some comments, I guess, about the November asset management meeting. Going back to February and our budget workshop, and the reason why the warden asked us to prepare for a full update of our asset management plan with current condition ratings for all assets, et cetera, is that you may recall at our February meeting, we talked to you about prior councils and the service level standards that councils had set for us. Again, my example of a PCI rating of 70 for our entire network. Our ability to finance that service level, you may recall that we were going to be extremely challenged in order to have sufficient reserves without going into lots of new debt or raising our levy significantly to maintain those service levels for our entire asset inventory. So that was really a cursory discussion. You know, we talked about 10-year capital plans. We presented those as part of our budget package in February, but we also estimated for you when we were going to run out of capital reserves, that we could not fully fund our 10-year capital plans for a number of reasons, but predominantly the considerable increase in cost within our linear assets mostly, but also within our building renovation costs. We've seen spikes, and all of you will have noticed that there were spikes in tenders that were received over the last 3 years, at least, maybe more, where some of our costs, our benchmark costs, have increased by about 40%. So the meeting that will take place in November will give you a very detailed picture of our current asset condition ratings and what funding levels will be required to keep our assets at those service level standards. What you'll see is, again, those same options presented to you, either significant increases in levy dedicated to funding the capital plan, or significant increases in debt to fund that plan, or decisions that you're going to have to make to reduce your service level standards. In other words, you cannot continue to afford to drive on a road network with a PCI of 70 if you're going to fund it at a level of 55. And that's essentially what I presented to you in February. So we'll spend a lot of time in November talking about infrastructure and its current condition, state of repair, and what it's going to cost us to bring that inventory or maintain that state of repair to the service level standards that you have set, either for buildings or for fleet or for linear assets, equipment items, kind of not in the same category. What will fall out of that is, I think, a realization that we're going to, as a organization, have to either increase funding to capital or decrease those service level standards. And based on those choices, that will have an impact on what your total levy maximums will be to not only put money into your capital plan, but what's remaining in order to afford your operating expenses, your operating budget, which we'll present in January. And I think that's what, Craig and I have been struggling with is, you'll recall that last year when we met in February, we had a $3 million reduction in expenses in order to hit your 2.5% levy target. We did pull an awful lot of those, or we did move forward with a lot of those cost reduction strategies. But at the same meeting, we also agreed to enhance paramedic services with an additional car. That's a $1.2 million cost. Next year, you're only going to see about $250,000 coming from the Ministry of Health to begin to pay for that. So you'll have $1 million pressure, 2% levy pressure, just on that one decision alone. You also made a decision to pay for all of the operating expenditures, the pressures that we had, by reducing the transfer to our capital reserves. And you pulled $1.5 million out of capital reserves in order to pay for operating expenses. That decision will come back before you in November to either reinstate that level of funding to your capital plan, or, and if you do that, you now have $1.5 million shortfall on the expenditure side of the house. So there's lots of pieces to this puzzle, and that's why we have designed the November meeting to kind of really tackle the capital and the funding of the capital first, so that we're all aware of what it's going to take to maintain our condition ratings for our assets go forward. And from that, you're going to have to make some decisions around either more funding, lower the service levels, and then what's your maximum number or levy dollars that are available then for operating expenditures. And so that's kind of how we saw things coming forward. As always, we're subject to committee and council direction. If you wish to set a target for us to build a budget around, as I said, on the operating side of the house, there are already some significant pressures in front of us as far as cost of living increases related to either decisions or collective agreements, et cetera, et cetera. So we will certainly take those into consideration as we sit down and begin to build the 2024 operating budget. However, there's a big capital component that needs to be discussed and some decisions made there as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. Member from Edmundston Bromley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I fully agree with all of the comments of Mr. Foss. I think that probably it bears repeating, one of the key components of the long-term financial plan is that operating costs be maintained at 2% and no more than 2.5%. And I'm pretty sure that that would be challenging given the human resource component towards the expenditures of this enterprise, that's probably not going to be achievable. However, one of the in my estimation, a fairly significant omission from the list, there's no question that we have some capital, there's no question that we've added some new services. And yes, we had in our 2023 budget adopted that we would transfer $1.5 million less into our TCA than the budget had called for. That was the singular largest component to try and keep it to the 2.5%. So one thing that does bear consideration, and there's some fluctuation given whatever the holdings may be at any point in time, but certainly when we saw the Q2 report for the County of Renfrew, and through my calculations, we are going to earn on investments, that is through the RAG and through our GIC holdings, I anticipate that we're going to earn $2.5 million more than we budgeted. So $2.5 million more in investment income versus the $1.5 million that we didn't add to capital. It seems that dependent, of course, on how the expenditures, how that surplus deficit is going to look at the end of the year. There may be other considerations, there may be challenges, but they certainly were not apparent in the Q2, in the mid-year reporting. So that is why I don't have a crystal ball that is any clearer than Mr. Foss's. Mine is the snow globe, just as his is. But I think it is important that we not overweight all of the challenges with giving scarce consideration towards some of the revenue streams that we might anticipate. And until such time as the Bank of Canada begins to diminish the prime rate, which flows into the bank rate, which flows into our RAG rate, we can anticipate a continuation of pretty significant investment income, and that's something that can mitigate against what we require of our ratepayers. So with that in mind, Madam Chair, it's not my intent to certainly cut off debate, but we'll see where the rubber meets the road. I will move that we set a target that is at least consistent with the long-term plan, so that we set a levy target of 3% for 2024.
Do you have a seconder? Second by the member from North Algonquin Wilbur Force. Discussion. Member from Killaloe, Haggerty and Richards.
Thank you, Chair. I do appreciate the fact that our Director of Corporate Services did warn us last year that we were going to be in trouble at some point. This is reality, to fill those needs in reserve. Is there a possibility of preparing a document that shows a growth? Not that you're committing to it, but a document that shows this is what our operations will increase under, say, the 3% levy increase, in addition to waiting until we do the asset plan? Can we have both documents?
There's some pondering going on. Can they get back to you on that? I think that was my issue. Okay.
Chair, and Mr. Foss can chime in if through you. The problem with that, sir, is that committees, the individual committees, will not have seen the budget nor debated the budget. If somebody wants to bring forward a plan to pave every road in gold, that will not have been debated at that point, because the 9th is just to address the long-term financial plan and the asset management plan, not to debate the intricacies of each departmental head's budgets. So it would be hard. You'd be basically spending a lot of time building a budget that hasn't been debated yet. It would just be a staff recommended budget and staff recommended plans that have not been discussed nor sussed out by committee. Unless
Thank
Mr.
you.
Foss has anything else
I think
to
I
add.
saw the warden.
I was, so I think the consistency with the 3% is a good idea. The original, just to get us a draft, but recognizing that it may end up being quite different in January once we go through November. So, and I think if we followed the traditional model where it's a percentage, and then come back with budget pressures that we have to individually discuss, is what we're going to likely end up doing, knowing that we've got the shadow of the November 9th meeting, which could add a whole new layer of cost to that 3%. So, yeah, I think, I think it gets us started and gets us into the traditional budget cycle or process. And that was and frankly, that was the intent of getting the November 9th report card, because I think, we've never really had a good, robust discussion on the asset management plan. We've had periods of an hour or 2 hours in budget when everybody is swirling with a series of numbers and knowing that there are 9 budget pressures coming at the end of the day, or 4 or whatever, that you had to make decisions on. So I think, the idea was to get the November 9th meeting, was to make sure we fully educate ourselves. So I'm okay with going forward with because this 3% gets us into the budget cycle, and fully understanding we're going to have to do some significant tweaking and tinkering on maybe after the 9th, but most definitely in January.
Thank you. That's sort of where I was going. It would be like me trying to squeeze back into my size 2 jeans. It's never going to happen. We've had some discussion. I'll call for the vote. All in favor of the 3%? Opposed? That carries. Okay, with that, let's take 5, please, Tina. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. At this time, we'll turn it back over to information item number 2, the tax rate summary. Number 3, the taxable and PIL levy. And finally, the 2023 levy summary report. Moving on to POA workload and administration backlog, and I would love to take credit for this, as I'm sure Craig would, but the timing is a little suspect, so. Anything on those 2 items? Seeing none. MPAC. Oh, I'm sorry, member from North Laguna, Wilbur Force.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it is encouraging to see the charges received going up and the backlog going down, and that we're not having as many court dates canceled. So I want to give credit to the delegation that it had something to do.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly the Attorney General moves. That guy is on it. All right, member from Abbotston Bromley.
I think perhaps, Madam Chair, at the very least, perhaps the wheels were squeaky enough, if nothing else, to have gotten some grease. With respect to the item 6, the backlog, I mean, there's the other element to this, though, too, is months to clear backlog. Of course, how can I be disappointed that it is down to 12, and hopefully it is going to continue? But it's not through any great effort. It is that there were 500 people won the lottery in this instance. I have to be very careful. I suppose there were 500, and of course everyone is innocent until proven guilty, but I have to think statistically there had to have been at least 80% of those that would likely have been found to have been non-compliant, perhaps with statutes of Ontario. So they won the pandemic lottery, if you will, that they were simply removed from the offenses.
And we discussed that with Attorney General Downey. I do want to thank Craig. I'm not sure who did that amazing briefing note, but it had everything in it that you could possibly want to talk about. So thank you for that. And thank you to the warden for entrusting me with that delegation. Anything further? Well, you did.
Yeah, I didn't feel like going cross-country. Halfway across London and almost into Sarnia for a delegation, I'll be honest with you. It was too far. It was too far apart for me to be back for my next one before lunch, so it wasn't going to happen.
It was very unusual. I had 3 delegations there, actually. It was very odd. Anyway, moving on to number 7, MPAC. Warden, do you want to speak about what we talked about at Roma last week about MPAC, or do you want me to?
You go right ahead.
Okay, so I love the fact that Jeff just said probably 2025, but if you think about the election cycle, I don't think the government's going to want MPAC to do anything the year preceding an election or in the election year. And so it was sort of thrown out there during our Roma board meetings last week that we might actually be looking at 2027, which would be 11 years. So just think about, Craig just went, wow. That's just thinking in terms of election cycles. 2024 would have actually been the year to do it, but now we know that's not going to happen. So, yeah, member from Abbotston Bromley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it is worth noting, as Mr. Foss did, that the reassessment, by and large, is neutral as far as tax levy. Our rates, if we ever get back to an assessment base, then we may very well see everyone's tax rates cut in half because we're going to see a substantial increase in value from the base year of 2016. My larger concern, though, is we all do know that there is a reallotment or reapportionment across different classes, across even within class, that those things happen. So I have no doubt that that is happening, that that's real. So right now, there's no question that there are those who are benefiting from the delay in MPAC, but there are those who are subsidizing because that's already happened. But because we're frozen at 2016, the current burden is continuing. And I dare say that it is probably substantially going to change where the burdens may fall. And I just even think of reassessment value itself. If your assessment value, everyone knows from their own properties, if your assessment value goes down, it goes down immediately. If your assessment goes up, it's phased in over 4 years. So in this instance, I will guarantee you that there are people that are shouldering a larger burden, or if not people, perhaps commercial enterprises, industrial enterprises, I know not. But I know with certainty that the current burden that was assigned from the 2016 assessment is not valid in 2023 or 2024.
I don't disagree with you. However, I think that it's going to be a bit of a logistic nightmare when these assessments do come out for each municipality. And what we are going to do with our tax rates, I don't believe that there'll ever be proper parity. And again, it's phased in over 4 years. The other challenge that I have is that anybody that's taken out a building permit since 2016, they're assessed right away. So I will tell you, we built a garage and our taxes went up. They doubled just for a garage. So there are people shouldering the burden of other people not being reassessed. So I just want to throw that out there. Anything further on MPAC? Seeing none, the Ministry of Health news release. Member from Deep River, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just wondering, so we were looking at, and I forget the number, if it was 892 or 982,000, the shortfall that we had, that we were expecting. I think it was 892,000. But there was also a shift from programs that were 100% funded. So I'm wondering if staff has done any analysis on the changes, potential changes from 100% funded programs to back to 75-25 instead of 70-30. Because there still could be an impact to us.
Absolutely, and that was also discussed at Roma last week, and it doesn't seem that there's a lot of detail out at this time. And as we all know, the devil is in the details. Member from Emiston Bromley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll somewhat go out on a limb. I'm going to suggest that probably not, because this announcement was less than almost precisely a month ago, I guess. The challenge is it was twofold. In 2019, with the proposal to have a new funding formula, it was moving to a 70-30 from a 75-25 on those that had been shared. In addition, there were several programs that were 100% funded by the province. So on that, there would be uncertainty. I'm with almost complete certainty, I would say, anything that had now been subject to a cost share from 100% is likely not going back. Having said that, there still are a couple of programs for those sitting on Board of Health. You can confirm that this is still so, but unorganized territory. So there are parts of Algonquin Park that are serviced out of RCDHU that are not part of the funding municipalities, the obligated municipalities. That continues to be 100% funded. The other element of public health across the province of Ontario is the seniors' dental health, and that continues to be, it was from its inception, and it continues to be 100% funded, and I anticipate both of those will still continue to be so, but I expect that those will be the exclusive domain of the exclusively provincial funding.
Thank you, but you do bring up a very important question, and everybody was sort of murmuring about it. Yes, Warden, go ahead.
Yeah, we don't know yet, just in short. And nobody knows. And then secondly, there was I'm not going to say ominous statement, but a precautionary statement where there's going to be an examination of the roles and what roles municipalities can play, and an examination of the role of municipalities in public health. So my long experience tells me that there's going to be some new roles assigned to us and likely not new dollars. But so that was my input into any conversations I've had in the last little while about the minister's announcement at AMO was, I'm a little worried about that last paragraph. So, and we did let the ministry people know that as well when we were chatting with them, saying, hey, what does that mean? And we were assured that they were looking into it.
Yeah, that face, exactly. And I think, what Jeff said was right. It was a preemptive strike right before AMO to send out this news release, right? So that there was a good news story, but again, the devil's in the details. Anything further on number 8?
And there is the 1% portion of that too. Like they did guarantee, it was a 1% for the next 4 years or 3 years, something like that. An annual increase, so that's, and that was presented to be reassuring to us. We did notice that CPI was slightly more than 1%, so we sent that along as well.
Thank you. All right, number 9, development charges. Member from Amherst Bromley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is actually going back to 8. I just wanted to be clear. There was not a news release issued by the Ministry of Health prior to AMO. It was issued subsequent to AMO. In fact, in the delegation, Mr. Kelly, as you are aware, in an oblique but typical fashion, we were given to understand that it had been leaked, and it was not particularly welcome that it had been done so, because of course it was in the prepared comments of the Minister of Health at her speech, the keynote speech that she presented at AMO. In fact, there was information leaked that had it appearing in media, I think on perhaps the Thursday prior to us going down, but that was not out of the communications department of the government.
Thank you for the clarification. In any case, we all knew it was coming. Number 9, development charges. Thank you for the extension. I know that a lot of us, we saw that date and our CAOs went, but wait a minute, we don't have a council meeting until this date. So yes, I believe that our comments have been sent, but not council comments. So thank you for that. Anything on, yes, Warden.
So not to be a little bit of a brown substance disturber, but it's going to be interesting to see how members may separate themselves from the opinions or expressions that their local councils provide, because it's an entirely different vehicle to be sitting here looking at what development charges might bring, benefit to the county of Renfrew and the community over the long haul, versus we don't want it, or we think it's bad, or we think it's got these limitations. So it'll be interesting to see the transformation as people walk through the front door and put on their hat for this corporation versus the other corporation. So just curious.
Interesting. All right. Anything further on number 9? And finally, number 10, the business case for Bonnechere Manor. Could I get a mover and seconder for the report as a whole, please? Moved by the member from Broodnell, Lindock, and Raglan, seconded by the member from Deep River. Any further discussion? All in favor? And that carries. And moving back, is there any new business? We do not have a closed meeting, so the date of our next meeting is Thursday, October 12th, and I will ask for a mover and seconder to adjourn, please. Moved by the member from Laurentian Hills, seconded by the member from North Algona Wilbur Force. All in favor? We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.